workshop for Temple City Council. It's currently 2:30 on April 21st. First item on the agenda is public comments. I don't see that anyone has signed up for that, so we'll move on to the next topic, which is our regular meeting agenda. Anyone have anything they would like to discuss? Any of the consent agenda items? I know you've got one you want to pull.
Yes.
Is that correct?
3M, second reading for 1700 Moores Mill Road.
Okay.
And the applicant had requested a little bit more flexibility on the townhome locations. Right now, what you all approved required townhomes to have alley access. So they're proposing, staff is in agreement, recommending approval to, if townhomes are facing a major or a community collector or an arterial, then need to have our alley access. Otherwise, we would allow some front-loaded townhomes on neighborhood collectors without alleys and even local streets.
Okay.
So that's, and second part, Superintendent Neil Jeter provided a response today to Jason Deckman, the case manager, that they as a school district are opposed to the multifamily and townhomes. So that's new information we thought that y'all would like to have. So that'll be in the presentation.
So
Okay.
you're pulling this.
Pulling it, yes, if you all wouldn't mind pulling that for a brief update.
Oh, for an
And
update.
yes, an update, and also, rather than just having on consent.
Okay, so we're not tabling it. We're just going to pull it for.
Yes,
further
for
discussion.
consideration of
Yeah.
that additional information.
Gotcha. We can do that.
So going to, do we ask you questions about Ally now or then?
Either, and if you have them now, absolutely.
Where will the trash cans be located?
So for those that have,
They're in the alley.
if they're in the alley, then yes, most likely solid waste would be, and pickup would be in the alley. Otherwise, it would just be at the curb, just like traditional single family
Okay.
detached.
I just had this conversation with Bren this week. I'm just getting increasing calls from people unhappy about the multiple use trash cans or multiple family trash cans in alleys. So would these be individual behind or multiple?
Like roll to the curb.
Yes,
No, the big ones.
not sure. John, do you have
I think most likely individual. I really think we're not setting out the multifamily
Okay.
anymore. You're not the only person who would like to get away from them. So
Well, I personally don't, I'm not trying to get away from them. I'm just getting concerned about it. So
well,
I know.
kind of.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
I am.
Oh,
trying to get
okay.
away from it.
Well, then I am too. Don't you do that, Ryan.
All right.
John, you have to call your council.
Whatever you say.
Okay, so I have no question.
All right.
Thanks.
Council, anything else?
Mayor, we do have some information on item number 6.
So item 6 is vehicle purchase, and so it has a local preference option with it. We've had similar awards like this in prior years. So basically, there's 3 vehicle purchases, 2 small SUVs, where the low bidder is an out-of-town bidder, but we have an in-town bidder, that being Johnson Brothers, on those 2 small SUVs where you have a local preference option to consider. And then also a larger dually pickup also. That one is a local preference to Don Ringler, if you want to consider that.
And language will be at the,
The language,
okay.
there's actually, we drafted it as 4 different options. You have the option to, staff's recommendation, which per policy is always to go with the low bidder.
Sure.
You have that option. You have the option to award both local preferences, take both local bids, or you have the option to pick either or if you wanted to do that also. So.
Okay.
And in presentation, you'll give, in council, you'll give the difference in cost and.
Yes, the difference on the SUVs is basically $1,430, which
Each?
is, no, that's in total. For
Total?
2 SUVs, per vehicle would be $715, but a total of $1,430. And that's within 2.24% of the low bidder. And then on the larger truck, Don Wrangler was within 3.69% of the out-of-town bidder, and that dollar value is $2,300.70.
That threshold is 5%.
5%.
We don't. Anything else? All right, let's move on to item 2, which is to receive a presentation from Dr. Matt Smith regarding the Belton Independent School District bond election. And everyone here knows the rules, right? No outward display of support or non-support, I guess.
Because we're in a public venue and public resources are being used, even though you all are not associated with Belton ISD, you still can't advocate for or against the passage of this bond.
So I don't have people that are gonna applaud is what I hear. I think I understand that. And I'm a superintendent. I'm
Don't
used
get
to
your feelings
that.
That
That happens every day. Mayor, where would you like me to present from? I don't know what's best if you have anybody on Zoom.
That is a great question. There's the public feed up there, so it may not typically,
Wherever you want to. I
yeah,
think
typically
it'll
met
go all
people.
the way to Susan or all the way to Tracy.
Yeah,
wherever you want to.
whatever works
Is this
for you.
the clicker that I
Yes, sir.
want? So I'll just come on up here and we'll see how that works. And then we'll go from there. I appreciate your the opportunity to talk to y'all today. Again, my name is Matt Smith. I'm proud superintendent in Belton ISD and proud to serve students and community members in the city of Temple as well as Belton Morgan's Point Resort. So thanks for taking a few minutes with me today. I promise I won't take long. I know you have an important work session to go through. On February the 15th, our Board of Trustees voted to put forth 2 propositions to voters to consider on May 7th. Those propositions are listed in front of you. Proposition A for $168 million, Proposition B for $5 million. Number one thing that I get asked through all of this is what does it mean for our taxpayers? This is not a property tax rate increase through our INS tax rate in Belton ISD, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. That does not mean that property tax bills will not go up. And I say that in every presentation. We understand that tax rates and values of homes are 2 things that go into property tax bills. I do not control the appraised values or the values for each home in the district. Second is it impacts every campus in our district. We have 19 campuses, and these bond propositions impact every one of our campuses. One of the things that I like to mention to everyone is it is important to note, because we have had questions. Yes, we do serve residents of the city of Temple in Belton ISD. We cover 200 square miles, and people have Temple addresses and go to Belton ISD schools. So we get questions sometimes about whether they're paying double taxes. Do we pay tax to Temple ISD and to Belton ISD? The answer is no. We are our own taxing entity. So if you live within Temple ISD boundaries, you get Temple ISD taxes. If you live in Belton ISD boundaries, your Belton ISD taxes. And any help that you all can help us get that word out, it would be appreciated because we get asked that question often. As you all know, we serve almost 200 square miles. You can see the 19 campuses. And one reminder, we also have 2,090 employees in the school district serving 13,384 students and counting. We got to the propositions by starting with a community group of about 70 community members that were made up of representatives throughout the community to serve on this bond exploration committee is the title of it. We kicked it off in the city of Temple at Lake Belton High School, and we had a wonderful turnout. And over a series of 7 meetings in about 28 hours, we studied the needs of the school district and the challenges that we faced as a school district. I realized that as a rather new superintendent in the area, I started 10 days before we closed for COVID, and my tenure here has been heavily impacted by COVID. So I did not go out to the committee with a list and say, here's what I think we need. In fact, we did the opposite of that. We had laid out the challenges in front of them, brought in guest speakers, brought in information, had them study the issues to lead to our final recommendations. Ultimately, there were 4 things that stood out through that study process. accelerated growth, aging facilities, ensuring that students throughout the district have equal opportunity, no matter what facility they attend, and safety and security. As we studied the material, you can see this map. This is a map from our demographer. We use Zonda education. They used to be called Templeton Demographics, and we've used them since 2014 in our district. Since that time, every 6 months, they come and present to our board of trustees, and you can see a history of growth in the district, obviously. This map is provided by them to our board of trustees. And in green, you can see the areas that are actively building subdivisions within the school district. I want to point out 2 specific areas. If you take a look in the north of our district, it's a West Temple off of Adams area, the Harbor Elementary attendance boundary. You see a lot of green around that area. There are rooftops going up all over in the Westfield area and along 317. And rooftops mean more students in Belton ISD. You also see 2 yellow rectangles there. Those are the future planned subdivisions that are infrastructure underway, roads underway, et cetera. It's my understanding those will yield 1,050 new homes in those 2 blocks. And so we have current growth, new homes going up, and future growth planned for that area. If I go all the way to the south of the district, you can take a look at the 3 Creeks subdivision down in Chisholm Trail. And in 3 Creeks, that was planned to be 1,500 homes. We currently have about 850 on the ground, meaning 650 new homes in that area. And then if you go to the east and you see the yellow boot-shaped area, that is a new developing home development there. That is a River Farms development. Just met with a developer yesterday. There are 1,700 homes planned for that development in the south of our district. Yes, sir.
Isn't there a sort of a number that's used of the number of students per new home?
There are yields, and they differ by neighborhood.
Right.
And so when we go through our demographer presentation, we have some in, there's some in the Lake Point area that would be Temple addresses off of 317. Those are a higher yield in those homes than there are in other homes. So it really depends on the different neighborhoods, which often depends.
What's a good average, would you say?
About 0.6. Right now, and I'll use the example in Lake Point, I believe Lake Point is a 0.84 yield. So it's a lot of students coming out of that area.
The yield again is number of students.
Yeah, the
Per
number of
household?
students per house.
Okay.
That's right. In this block right now, we have just over 250 elementary students in that block with 850 new homes on the ground. Don't know the exact calculation because it's middle school and high school aren't included in that. But yes, the yields do vary by your housing location. Often that is directly correlated with price of the home as well. What that leads us to, I talked about growth in the north, talked about growth in the south. I probably should have pointed out, you can see the attendance boundaries here. Tarver attendance boundary, Chisholm Trail, very large, Miller Heights and Southwest. Those are the important ones to hit real quickly. What that leads to in our elementary campus capacity is overcrowding. You can see that the Tarver elementary line is highlighted in red. If it's highlighted in red, that means it's over capacity. In the fall of 2022, Tarver will be over capacity. It was built for 800 students, and that will be at 825 in the fall. We've added 2 portables to Tarver Elementary in the last year to help address the growth there. It's important to note that Tarver actually outpaces all of our other schools regarding growth. So you can see over a series of years, that school is growing faster at the elementary level than any other school in our district. And moving down to the south, but it's at the top of the chart here, Chisholm Trail Elementary School currently is our largest elementary school in the district with 933 students in that school. Again, that school was designed for 800 students, and we've added 6 portables to that venue in the last few years to help deal with growth. Growth happening in the north, growth happening in the south. As the council and the mayor are aware, Charter Oak Elementary School is our newest elementary school in the district within the city of Temple. It was built and opened in 2019, and thankful for a passage of the 2017 bond in order to do that. The Charter Oak will be over capacity by 2024 as well. So we've seen the growth north-south and also in the center of our district. Our demographers also shared with us that as we continue to grow, we can expect to see 15,000 students by 2025, again, we're currently just under 13,400. And by the end of the decade, they're estimating us to be over 18,000 students within Belton ISD. So the committee studied that information, had presentation from our demographer. They also studied information of a facilities condition index. We hired an outside firm to come in and evaluate every one of our facilities in the district. As there weren't Belton ISD employees, so architects, engineers, plumbers, electricians, and they gave every one of our facilities a score in the district. They also assessed the space in the school district to have the type of education that we want, and they gave it an educational adequacy score as well. So with those two scores, the committee studied all of that information, and in summary, what they found is pretty obvious. Our older schools need more investment, and our newer schools are in better shape overall. But three schools really stood out: Miller Heights Elementary Southwest and Belton High School. Those three schools have been on the ground for a long time and needed significant investment. Finally, I asked the committee 3 questions over that series of 7 meetings, and I asked them to answer 3 things. Do we need a bond election? If you tell me yes, when would you recommend it? If you tell me when, what should we include in it? And what you can see, they said yes. They said May of 2022. And what you can see on the left-hand column was a prioritized list of projects that the Bond Exploration Committee came up with. You can see that that's well over $400 million that we needed to consider. And so we're obviously not going to for a bond election for that amount. The middle column is the superintendent recommendation. My job is to take that information and recommend to our board of trustees a thoughtful bond election to consider. I did that in January, and you can see almost line for line, I took the community word to start with as our prioritized projects in this list. If the dollar amount is noted in yellow, I adjusted those dollar amounts based on needs that I knew we had at the schools. Finally, you can see in the third column, that is what our board of trustees landed on after a 4-hour work session going through every project. They landed on Proposition A and Proposition B that are listed here for council and mayor to view. Ultimately, in Proposition A, the things I'll highlight here is it addresses land for future needs. We asked what build out would look like in Belton ISD over the next 30 years. Our demographer gave us that report, and build out could look like 28,000 students, 19 elementary schools, 6 middle schools, and 3 to 4 high schools, depending on the size of our high schools. So land for future needs as we continue to grow or potentially continue to grow is a need for us as a school district. We currently own 2 sites that we can build elementary schools on, and I'll talk to you about sites that are proposed in this bond election in just a minute. An addition at Southwest Elementary School and addressing the aging facility there helps us increase capacity, and I'll explain that more as well. But you can also see some specific investment in career and technical education facilities at Belton High School, fine arts facilities at Lake Belton Middle School. Right now at Lake Belton Middle School, we currently have orchestra programs in regular classrooms, and a fine arts facility expansion at that school would not only allow us to serve the students there, but it also would equalize the facilities. The facilities at North Belton Middle School and Lake Belton Middle School, both properties in the city of Temple, have different facilities for fine arts programs. And so this would equalize the facilities and opportunities for kids. Capital improvements and renovations at Belton High School. These aren't small items. These are major items, HVAC units, replacing ceiling and lighting, et cetera, that was found in that facilities assessment. And then finally, the Ag Barn expansion. Belton ISD has the 5th largest FFA program in the state of Texas. We do not have the 5th largest school district in the state of Texas. So that tells you how big of a draw that program is for our school district. And so this would allow us to expand that as we continue to grow in number of students at the secondary level. I mentioned 2 elementary campus locations, and my pointer isn't quite working, so I'm going to point up here. We own a property right up here off of Pea Ridge Road in the North Gate subdivision, 15 acres. This bond proposition would include building a new school on that location up there. I've been in contact with Brent since I've joined Belton ISD, and so we've made sure that we are in constant contact about that property. That would allow us to address the overcrowding at Harbor and also plan for growth in the north of our school district. When you open a new school district or school, as you all know, you adjust attendance boundaries, so we would be able to even out attendance boundaries and absorb that growth for the future. In the south of our district, it's a little bit different, but it helps us accomplish 2 things. We actually own property here, that's the Hubbard Branch subdivision that's actively building. We own 15 acres to build an elementary school there. That allows us to do two things. Currently, you see a star right next to that Hubbard Branch property. That's the current Miller Heights facility in our district. Miller Heights has served students for over 50 years and has scored the worst on our facilities condition index regarding condition of the facility. This proposition would take Miller Heights offline. It would no longer serve students. We would build a new school at the Hubbard Branch location, which is 1.5 miles away. We would also be able to increase capacity. We would not only address the aging facility, but the current Miller Heights facility serves capacity of 400 students. But that also includes 5 long-term portables at that school that have been there about 30 years plus. And so if you took those away, we would be able to serve about 300 students max at Miller Heights Elementary School. By adding that new school and not taking Miller Heights offline, we're gaining 400 seat capacity in the south of our district. I also mentioned Southwest Elementary School. Southwest also scored lower on that facilities condition index. Southwest is a school that served us for a long period of time as well. And this proposition includes an expansion at Southwest and addressing the aging facility needs there. In the 2017 bond election, voters approved some of the same upgrades at Lakewood Elementary School in our district. We got a new gymnasium, new fine arts classrooms, et cetera there. We would see the same thing at Southwest, but we would also see a 100 student increase in capacity by building a new classroom wing there. Overall, with those two projects, we would increase the capacity by 500 students in the south of our district. Redraw attendance boundaries. As you can see, that Chisholm Trail attendance boundary is rather large. Chisholm Trail, again, is our largest elementary school in the district, and we would be able to relieve the overcrowding by redrawing those attendance boundaries and using the increased capacity. Yes, sir.
Dr. Smith, we often hear, and Temple ISD is doing the same thing, talking about portables.
Yes.
Can you just briefly tell us the disadvantages versus advantages, if any, of portables?
Yeah, a couple of things. Safety and security always comes up in this topic because one, those are outside of the walls of the school. And so you end up having students traveling outside and often fencing issues and security and outside access. So those are the number one things that often pop up. Second thing is quality of the classroom conditions, but often you want your teachers with other teachers in the building for a number of reasons. Student safety being one, but also collaboration and student grouping for instructional purposes. When you have students in those portable buildings, that's definitely not ideal for instructional purposes either. Long term, you can feel it when you walk into those portables, a different quality of the environment that you go to. And I think everybody sees it from the outside and feels it from the inside. We also think that impacts student learning and the adult feelings as they go into work every day. We want to be proud of the facilities that our community has and those allowed us to have. And you feel that going into some of those long-term portables. But number one thing that usually comes up is safety and the ability for teachers to be around other teachers to serve their kids. Thank you. So we would be able to address that overcrowding in Chisholm Trail, take Miller Heights offline, and expand Southwest, thus hitting two of our things in the facilities condition index at both Southwest and Miller Heights Elementary. Proposition A also includes a Delta program facility. Our Delta program, I'm not sure what they call it in Temple ISD, but we're proud to serve students over typical graduation age in school districts that have special education needs. We're required to serve them until age 22. We currently serve 27 students in Belton ISD in the Delta program, which is designed for students that have specific learning needs. Their learning isn't like English classroom and math classrooms. It is about life skills, transition skills, community access, so that when they are transitioned to their homes or to their future living space, they can be as independent as possible. This bond proposition allows for a construction of a Delta program facility, either construction of or purchase and remodel of, that would be specifically designed to meet their learning needs. The example that I give is welding. You wouldn't put a welding student in an English classroom and not give them welding equipment to learn how to weld. Same breath can be said about our Delta program students. We would like to create a facility that allows them to have access to apartment living scenarios, job living scenarios, so that they can have job skills, self-help skills, and independent living skills for the future. And we would be able to do that and capture regular classroom space at our other facilities, because currently they're in regular classroom space at both of our high schools. This would allow us to address their needs. Our current enrollment tells us that in 5 years, that population will double in our school district from 27 to 54 students that we're serving up until age 22. Obviously, the rest of the things that you can see, the one thing I want to point out, technology infrastructure is different than technology devices. In the 2019 legislative session, it was required upon school districts that if you have any devices, technology devices in bonds, that voters had to be able to vote on them separately. So that's the reason that you see two different bond propositions in Belton ISD. And there are $5 million designated for student and staff devices in that bond proposition. Well, some of the questions that I get are, why didn't you balance it out and give us choice A or choice B? This isn't choice. You have a yes or no choice on proposition A and a yes or no choice on proposition B as well. This wasn't about creating a package versus another package. State law requires us that if we're going to use any bond funds for technology devices, to list that as a separate proposition. On the previous proposition, it said infrastructure, that's the stuff in the wall that makes all our stuff work on a regular basis. Finally, I wanted to point out, I have a bunch of slides here. I will not go through them all one by one, but you can see all of the city of our schools in the city of Temple and the different projects that are proposed for every one of our schools within the city of Temple limits. Again, our older schools need the most attention. Our newer schools are in better shape, but this does impact every one of our schools within the district. And it's important to note that it also continues to help us plan for growth for the future and address those aging facilities. You can see it by feeder pattern, what it looks like. And I think this group knows, why do you use bonds? We have two buckets of funding for public schools in the state of Texas. Our maintenance and operations bucket, one tax rate in a school district, is 84% of it is on payroll for the 2090 employees of the school district. That leaves 16% for all other items, supplies, utility bills, et cetera, for a school district to take care of. 84%, obviously, with a lot of talk about increased teacher shortages and concern on staffing, wages, inflation. That's a big deal for us as a school district. And so some of the reasons you see buses and technology items for voters to be able to consider in this bond election are to move some of those items out of the maintenance and operations bucket and to allow us to finance those for the future. So we free up more money in the maintenance and operations bucket for hiring new teachers and salaries and benefits for our staff. Those are our current tax rates as a school district, and you can see that over time, we've worked to lower our tax rates. Our board has worked hard to do that, and they've done that in a variety of ways. Again, we are able to do this without a tax rate increase for the interest and sinking tax rate. Interest and sinking is how you pay debt service through schools. And the interest and sinking tax rate of Belton ISD will remain the same with these bond propositions. Some people ask, how do we compare to other fast growth school districts? It's important to note, not every district is considered a fast growth school district. There are qualifying criteria through TEA to be considered one. We are considered a fast growth school district, and you can see other Central Texas districts that are deemed fast growth and how our interest and sinking tax rate compares to them. They've done that. Our board of trustees, previous boards, previous administrators in our school district have done a good job managing the finances. And so there are three things that contribute to us being able to do this without a tax rate increase. One, obviously, property values are increasing. What we're asking voters to consider with these bond propositions is allowing us to use that property value increase and be able to use that to build new facilities and address our major maintenance concerns. Obviously, we also have an increased number of people moving into the area. So with every new home, we're sharing the tax burden more and more throughout the school district. And finally, our board has worked hard to address longstanding debt. Just in the fall, we refinanced a series of bonds from 2012, saved future payments of $4 million by doing that and taking advantage of lower interest rates. One other item to point out is that some people ask the question, why don't you just keep all the money you have coming into the school district already? We know that there's increased taxes happening, more people moving in, just keep that money. Just a reminder that school districts' maintenance and operations budgets are based on a per pupil basis. As we gain more in our local tax base and from our tax collections, TEA, Texas Education Agency, actually sends us less. You still get a per pupil basis. You don't get to keep all of that money. Over 65 taxpayers, this group knows well that those tax rates are frozen for school districts. That's state law. And just a reminder that new ballot language that changed in 2019, we are required to put on the ballots for voters to consider that this is a property tax increase. That property tax increase language you can see at the bottom of both of those ballots. I believe that they did that so people understand if you vote yes for a bond, then you are voting yes for an increased tax obligation over a series of years, just like a mortgage, similar to a mortgage. I wish as a superintendent, I could explain that more because I don't like that language, but that is what I'm required to put on the ballot. Just a list of financial stewardship pieces of information for everyone to know. We continue to work hard to take good care of our taxpayer dollars. Two things to note, we finished our previous bond, the 2017 bond, on time and under budget. We hired an outside construction auditor to make sure we were doing so. And then finally, you can see down at the bottom, the last bullet, every year we have a comprehensive annual financial report. Outside audit firm comes in and audits all of our finances, presents them to our board of trustees publicly, and we continue to receive the highest ratings possible. If we pass the bond, we'll address the items that I mentioned before, the growth in our school district and an investment in the aging facilities, also the access to student programs so that it doesn't vary by the building that they're in. But if the bond fails, what do we have to do? We have 780 new students that are slated to be in our school district this next year. And after that, I believe it's 500. And after that, it's 500. So we have to figure out how to use that maintenance and operations bucket of money to address the growth, the aging facilities, the transportation, and the technology, et cetera, in the school district as we continue to grow. Ultimately, the only thing I can ask for, I can't advocate yes or no votes, but I can ask everybody to please go vote. And I can ask you to ask your constituents to go vote, whether it's the Temple ISD bond election, the Belton ISD bond election. Our local votes matter immensely, and we need to have people out voting at this election coming up here. Any questions? We do have a Belton ISD bond website. We encourage you all to go to it. We will take any questions via email, phone calls. We want to make sure we have an informed voter base as well. I appreciate your time today. Thanks for letting me intrude on your work session.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I think everyone knows how to get in touch with Dr. Smith or Mr. Cooperman if you have any further questions.
Exactly. Don't think I need an introduction too much. So.
You were going to say something?
If anybody has any questions about the pack, I'm sure in the pack. If anybody has any questions, most of y'all have my number. If not, the next person next to you probably does. So
Thank y'all. Very good.
Appreciate
Thank
your
y'all
time.
very much. Okay, moving on to item number 3 is to receive and discuss a presentation on the proposed African American Churches Historic District. Ms. Atkins.
I'd like to make note that this is like our 4th meeting in 6 days or something, so I'm feeling a little bit like a traveling salesman with my map. But thanks to Brian for lugging it up the stairs for me. So just real quickly, hello again, I'm back. Brian's handing out a couple handouts right now with just some additional information that's really not in the presentation, but just might be useful for you to get a visual on what we're looking at with this proposed district. So I'll just dive right in if that's okay, everybody. This is the boundary that we're considering in East Temple. You can see that it is bound by East Avenue A to the north, the UP Railroad on the eastern side, and then East Avenue E on the south side, and then MLK Junior Drive or 8th Street on the western side. So over the past several months, actually fall of last year, the conversations got started on looking at some of the historic significance of our East Temple structures, areas, culture, just really asking us to have an evaluation of a little bit of all of it. I know Brian and the late Reverend Roscoe Harrison met with city management and some council to go ahead and get started. Anyways, to get those conversations started, Brian and I also attended a couple of meetings with the Temple Area Co-Ed Ministers Association on some Saturdays, along with Dean Morales, making sure that we were getting the feedback and understanding really what was being asked of us. So we did consider at first looking at some local landmark designations for individual structures, but the feedback that we were receiving was that a district was really more of the interest for this area. So that's the way that we decided to proceed. So again, just looking real quickly at the whole process from when we started late last year, historic district application was started on behalf of the residents and the stakeholders in the area. And this is done basically by staff drawing up this application on behalf of these folks and then taking it forward to the Historic Preservation Board for consideration. So we've had some informational meetings, meeting with resident stakeholders, gone out in the neighborhood, knocking on doors, just talking with everybody, getting some feedback. Would like to note that it's been very positive so far with those that we've spoken with. We have recently sent out property owner notifications. So that includes everybody that would be within the boundaries, as well as the 200-foot buffer on the outside of that, similar to what we do for zoning cases. And then we also have taken this to the Historic Preservation Board for a review and a recommendation that happened yesterday, which I'll touch base with you guys on that here in a minute. And then now we're here talking with you guys at workshop and then hopefully moving forward to an agenda item soon. Why historic preservation? We know that we have our one local historic district already, and we see what a great asset that is to our community. Really just making sure that we extend this opportunity to other areas of the city. We want to consider our strategic plan, our comprehensive plan, even in our neighborhood planning districts. We have identified areas that are prime or have an interest for historic preservation. Really wanted to draw your attention to the comp plan 5.2.3 and 5.2.4. That's basically directing us to, honor our heritage through historic designations and also make sure that we evaluate opportunity for additional local historic districts. So this is our current district that we have, the one that's already on the books since 1980. Started that process, I think it's 78. But anyways, this is where our Chapter 17 historic preservation overlay currently applies to this district. And again, Chapter 17, you guys graciously had me in here several times to go through an amendment for that. But it's basically our ordinance that is the statute that gives us the ability to protect our historic resources. So everything that's applicable to our current local historic district would also be applicable to this new historic district if it is designated. So that minor amendment that we did, just a quick reminder, is that we now refer to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. Basically, it acknowledges that there's going to be a need to alter or add to existing structures, and that's completely understandable as we maintain changing uses. And then really the intent is just to make sure we have that long-term preservation, keeping those historic materials and features of the buildings that do remain. And then again, it's an opportunity for staff to have a design review. We have lots of infill development opportunities in this area, so we want to make sure that we have a focus on that compatibility moving forward. That process of what that looks like when these applications come in, you can see the form on the top. That is the application, very simple form. We don't want to make it cumbersome or a burden to our applicants. So basically, it's whatever they would submit for a building permit. They tack this to it. It gives a quick text on the scope of work that they're expecting to do to their property. And then you can see the process. Most everything right now can go for an administrative review. If anything is disapproved or there's some conversation to be had, those can be forwarded to the Historic Preservation Board for consideration. Ultimately, the goal is to get applicants on the way and moving along with their requested projects. So that certificate on the bottom is what we have every intent on issuing to these applicants. With that responsibility also comes great opportunities. So when you have local historic districts, that really brings attention to that historic preservation aspect, and there are grant opportunities available. I won't go into a whole lot of detail. We've done that before in previous meetings, but again, just some of the ones that we pulled out that would be specific to some of the structures in this proposed district would be the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund. Lots of great opportunities there for research and even preservation projects. So we've had some informational meetings. On March 10th, we went inside the district to the Corinth church and met with residents and stakeholders there. We had a really great turnout, lots of positive feedback. Thank you, Judy, for being there and helping us with that meeting as well. It was a really great first communications with everybody. And this came after really just knocking on some doors and passing out flyers and getting folks interested in coming out to visit with us. We've held another meeting since then. This was on April 14th. Crazy day, but great events. And we had several people show up. So this really was focused on our current district that we have on the books. And then also we invited those within the district or in the area as well. For the proposed district, it was open to anybody, but we really focused on getting the word out to those two groups and getting everybody out there. Real quickly, just want to go over the significant structures. So the 3 churches that are part of this list already have state markers. That doesn't provide any protections, but it is a recognition program through the state, which that's a great start. But I think really the interest was what can we do as a city to help these entities make sure that they have local protections as well as opportunities for some grant funding. So as you can see on this map, there's a red line there. That was the original boundary that when we went out in these the first public meeting, that's the boundary we had decided on to just start with. And with that feedback that we received, it was actually recommended that we bump it up another block. So to the north, so we would include some more of those residential structures as well, which was a great recommendation. So we went ahead and did that. And that's what we took out to the second public meeting. And then I've knocked on all the doors in that new area and talked with as many people as I could. So we do have 8th Street Baptist Church, Corinth Baptist, Wayman Chapel, the Wheatley School, and the lone structure in the 300 block of MLK Junior Drive. So I just threw a couple slides together to show y'all kind of the historic impact that these structures have had in the community, and they're really the anchors of this community and this proposed district. So we have the 8th Street, Corinth, Wayman Chapel. Both Wayman Chapel and 8th Street were established in the 1880s. So churches that have been part of our community for a really, really long time. Wheatley School, and then the structure at 311 South MLK. So this is just a little snippet from some information that Craig over in our Springer Archives has provided. I wanted to show this real quickly that we know that's the only building left, but this really did used to have a lot of structures along MLK, and it really did have a significance to this community. And though those structures might not be there now, just understanding that community and having the district really doesn't have a whole lot of buildings to protect per se, but it really is just bringing awareness and that community pride to the culture and the significance of this area to our community as a whole. There is some residential character that's unique to this area. We see in other parts of town as well, but very concentrated in this area. We have the pier and beam homes, a lot of shiplap siding, just some unique features that are really great. And actually the houses on the top there's 4 of them. Some of you might be familiar with them. They're behind the old funeral home, the property that's now going to be the Citizens for Progress site. So I was worried sick that those were going to be torn down because they were all boarded up and just looking pretty shabby, but they have since been purchased by Caleb Longino, and he is redoing all of them exactly how we would recommend if this were already in a historic district. So he's doing great work there, and we're just really excited to see that investment in this area. And that's what we want to continue to see in this area. So again, just a quick recap. Here's the boundaries of what we're looking at, bringing this forward to you guys today. Wanted to go over basically from start to beginning or start to finish. So initiated by the residents and the stakeholders. So city staff was directed to get this going. We've done the application. Basically that'll apply the chapter 17 to this area the same as it would in the one that we already have on the books. There's no impact to property ownership. I just wanted to make that clear because that has been a question that we've heard many times, and just wanted to clarify that it does not change anything with the ownership. So a certificate of appropriateness review for exterior changes, just as you would with a building permit, what we do currently in our other district would still apply to this district as well. But again, with that responsibility comes those opportunities of grants. Property owner notifications have been mailed. We sent out 110 of them, and we've received 3 before I came to this meeting, 2 that agree with this and 1 that disagrees. Historic Preservation Board considered this yesterday. They will send a recommendation to you guys at the regular agenda, going ahead and asking to approve the designation of this boundary with consideration of an expansion actually to this boundary. We heard from several folks on the call that they were wanting to be included as well, and I can go into that if you guys would like here or later or whenever, but I can show you the area in question. And then the additional properties that are interested in designation, we've heard from several that are not near this area. It wouldn't be a contiguous boundary. So those we might have to either look at another district or individual landmark designation. But there are several properties that are interested, not just in this area, but in the east side in general. Just an update on our timeline. We went to the board yesterday on the 20th. We're here today with you guys on the 21st. Right now, we're on the May 5th agenda to have first reading for the ordinance, and then hopefully May 19th for the second reading. So I know that was kind of a fast and furious out of district, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Do you think that there might be for our meeting to address this, a staff recommendation or a historical preservation board recommendation to expand the size of this?
Correct. So I can just.
Why don't you spend a moment?
Sure. Yes, that's a great idea. So we had the property owners here reach out to us with some interest for historic preservation designation of such type. I think there's been previous conversations with them before this has spurred their interest in knowing what would be best for them to do with their property as well. So the board yesterday was taking consideration. I put the board spot for this now. Sorry, Tracy.
I feel like I was blocking.
So they were wanting to explore the possibility of expanding the boundaries. It was mentioned to either bring this one south. There is a structure shown here on the map. I need to go double check because it might have been up for demolition. So I need to see if this one's even here since this was created. And then also expanding west of MLK Junior Drive. And the reasoning behind that was that there was lots of businesses along here. Some of our, right, once upon a time. So they did recommend going ahead and approving this boundary, and then want staff to consider and bring them a recommendation for either an expansion, west of MLK and south of E, or would this be better served with a local landmark designation? They just wanted to have it on the record that Right. No, what I'm bringing for the first meeting will be this boundary, but the conversation has been started with the board, and they would like a recommendation from staff to consider expansion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, I had essentially the same question as Wendell. At the meeting when May, whatever, the one that's coming up, not today, that doesn't cut off timing that we could be expanded later.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So the recommendation that will come right now is that we go ahead and approve this boundary as shown with consideration for expansion in the future.
Okay. Good.
Because we can amend the boundary. Or if we do the research and find out that it really has significance on its own, you can talk with the property owners on their interest in the local designation, which carries the exact same parameters as the district. It's just on an individual lot.
I can't visualize what's there in that little triangle, so to speak, but that you said they were interested.
Yes, ma'am. It's
I would
house.
hate, I'm sorry.
It's a house with some outbuildings.
Historic?
It's about 100 years old.
It's a really.
Okay, so definitely historic. I would hate not to jog down and include it if you found it valid.
And we could amend it and add it in the future. It's not that if we approve this boundary, that's it. Everybody else is out. That's not it. If we do a little bit of research and we realize that does make sense to include it in the boundary, we can always amend it.
I just want to comment that just appreciate all the work you've put into this, you and Brian. It's really made a big difference. We met just a few months ago, Roscoe, before he passed, with Bryn, and she said, let's do it. And so it's just exciting to see how fast this is moving. And I know he would be really, really pleased. So I know that the area COA group is also very excited about it, and it's really brought a lot of us, brought them working closer with all of us really to kind of see we are part of the city. So thank you all.
I talked to Roscoe just before just a few days before he died, just coincidentally, and he just out of the blue mentioned this and how much he liked it.
Yes, ma'am. I don't, he was joking with Brian and I when we were at that meeting. He said, well, y'all need to hurry up because I want to see this done before I die. And I was like, Roscoe.
I think he knew something we didn't.
Yeah. So he would be very, he would.
I think it's great there are grants available to, help finance something like this. I appreciate the thoughtfulness in that. What would be the expenses associated? I know there'd be some signage and there'd be some, I think you said research. Also, just for what would be anticipated expenses around developing this?
So.
And I'm not asking necessarily for dollars. I'm just asking for items.
Okay, so, well, currently, I'm your expense. I'm on payroll, so I'm doing the research. So basically, I'll work with Craig to do as much as we can on this front end.
Sure.
And then really, I don't think there'd be any expense that I can think of from the city side, except.
If there is a budget request for next year, which we already had a historic resource survey that would be more comprehensive, larger scope of all these neighborhoods that are identified during the neighborhood planning process, but an additional amount to really dig in a little deeper in East Temple. And so, that would involve a consultant to be able to do that, a full historic resource survey, looking at, the age of the structures, so that we have an informed baseline of, okay, what's left, what's eligible, what would be considered contributing structure to a potential district, just like we have downtown, a National Register district, with non-contributing, what was built after the period of significance. So otherwise, though, Kelly and working with Craig can address a good baseline as these kind of questions come up. It's just, we're talking about a more comprehensive snapshot of what is potentially historic versus not, and that requires a consultant.
Yeah, very good.
And there's things that we can do, like, that we've talked about as a staff, and you'll probably see some budget recommendations around, collecting, documenting oral history of the area before, it's completely lost to time. But that they don't, this action wouldn't require you to do that. There's just enhancements to the program that we'll recommend, most likely in the future, that this is kind of the base, the foundation of
This, I'm assuming that's in the Ferguson Park.
This is actually in our downtown neighborhood.
Oh, really? Okay.
4th Street is the boundary, 14th Street rather is the boundary of Ferguson.
Okay, so it sits wholly in the downtown. Okay.
It's wonderful. Really wonderful.
And just, reading some of the history and watching, just envisioning, I guess, the changes that this stretch of roadway has gone through is just incredible. And knowing, what an important role it plays, I think it's really important. And I mean, you got to document the good and the bad and just, tell the story really of the area. And I think this is our first step to being able to do that.
Yeah, because like Brandon was saying, once it's gone, it's gone.
And that is in our work plan for the historic preservation board as well. That item is to get out there and do some of those oral histories and host an event where maybe after church, we're set up at one of the churches and, folks can bring in their shoe boxes full of old photos or whatever they have, just things that would otherwise, once our elders pass, some of that gets thrown in the trash because the family just doesn't know who those people are. But, those who have that shoebox under the bed, they do. And we need to get that now while we can.
I want to join city staff and do that. That'd be a fun job.
You can bug the map around with you. It's fun.
Very good.
So
That's
just
great.
real quick, thank y'all for the questions and comments, and feel free to contact me if something else pops in your mind later on. Just wanted to quickly point out that all the red properties on there are the ones that are within the boundaries. And you can see how it's adjacent to city parks and the space that's shared by the community. So I think that's also an important thing to point out. There's roughly a little over 100 lots, but only less than 30 or less than 40 structures within this area. So I thought that was also significant to point out some of those structures being vacant. So lots of potential for infill, and just want to make a note that it's not going to hinder infill. It's going to make sure that it's thoughtful infill.
And pocket park.
Yep, we actually
Room
in
for
our
pocket parks.
downtown plan, we show linear parks through there and some open
great.
space opportunities.
It's really.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, moving on to item number 4 is a discussion regarding the East Gateway project in the public park. And Councilman Walker, your name's on here.
It is. So we're about to kick off this project, and I was going back through some of our notes, and I didn't feel like the council really had an opportunity to take a look at the sculptures that are going to be going up. And I know that we're the ones that get the phone calls, and so Mayor and I we're both council liaisons for the reinvestment zone, and so we were in the project committee meeting when they presented them. And then I think in the board meeting as well. But in our packets, we only received a small picture of a sculpture that isn't one of the ones that has been chosen. So I just wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to take a look at what our public is going to get to see. And David, thank you for rearranging your schedule and being here today. David has all the answers always. So I'd like to turn it over to you to kind of explain the process.
Absolutely, thank you. So we actually had several pieces of art that the artist brought to us as far as mock-ups. So that's really how he does his process. And this is the same artist, by the way, that did all the art at Drake's facility. But we got initiated with him, and he brought several over for us to take a look at. And we brought these to the reinvestment zone. And of course, this is part of our East-West Gateway project that's been on the books for a while. It's a 2019 project for the reinvestment zone, and we are pushing that forward. We are using some money from the governor's award that I believe Tracy has plugged into the financing plan, and our budget for that project is $4 million. Just quick recap on that. And this was an area that the city did a great job of going to TxDOT, looking at their plan and saying, that's really not what we want for our gateway. We want to take this to the next level. And that's what the city has done and what the reinvestment zone has done. It's going to be a phenomenal gateway once we get completed. But we did have 2 art features in there. And like I said, the artist brought us 4 different options to take a look at. Project committee started that process off and reviewed it. And I'll just be the first to tell you, I gave no opinion. So I'm an engineer, so I don't do art well, but they did a really good job. And they made some recommendations and brought that forward to the full project committee for a review with city staff. And we ended up with these 2 pieces. And then that went forward to the board for recommendation and approval. And they went with these. We are in process right now with the 2 pieces. The artist is currently making both of these. He's about 60% complete. And why that's important is because we're on our TxDOT facility and we would do it anyway. In the size of these, they're 20 foot tall. We have to be what we call outside the clear zone. And that's an area where cars won't run off and in theory won't run off and hit it. What we have learned with the traveling public is they can do almost anything. So I'm not going to say they're not going to get hit, but we are outside the clear zone. And it also builds up a little bit. So they're going to have to try hard. It may have to be a Jeep. But these things are 20 foot tall outside the clear zone. And because of that and the location that we have to go into, where we have to go build a substructure for these to sit on, being 20 foot tall, We really need to get them at the beginning of the project so we don't tear things up later. This really needs to be one of the first things that happens. We get them installed and then we can build things around it. Otherwise, the construction equipment that is required to install these would be tearing up other things. So like I said, in progress, about 60% complete, and we'll have this as one of the first items that you see during the construction process. Good news is TxDOT's fully approved the plans and specs, so we're ready to go there. I know city staff's working very diligently on the AFA with TxDOT, the advanced funding agreement, I believe has to come back before council for approval. I think we're at the goal line on that. I know TxDOT asked for one small change on an exhibit, which has already been supplied. So hopefully you're seeing that in the next 30 to 60 days. And I really hope that we start the bidding process in June. That's going to be about 2 months, which y'all are very familiar with. And then I'm hoping by fall, we start construction on the project. It's going to take about a year. Quite a bit of infrastructure we have to put in place, but it's going to look phenomenal. So that's a quick recap, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I did, like I told Councilwoman Walker, not painted yet, so we still have options there. They are required to submit us samples for approval before we release them to go paint the art.
Mm-hmm.
So that is still an option, but it is in production. We get pictures all the time, and it's moving forward quickly.
So installation is more than a year away.
This fully complete. This art will be one of the first things we will specify, one of the first things that happens on the project. Because again, we've got to get it in there. If not, once we brought those cranes in, we would tear up other things around.
Sure.
It. And so this will be one of the first things that goes in, and we'll build everything around it.
So what do you anticipate the timing of the actual installation process beginning?
If
when these things begin to go into the air. So
assuming we're starting in fall for construction, I would anticipate right after the first year that these things are going in the air.
Okay.
And they will be constructed and ready to go.
Okay.
David, quick question.
Yes, sir.
Has the artist named them yet, or how's the naming work?
He is very liberal with his art. He says once you buy it, you can make it whatever color you want. You can call it whatever he's not,
Just give me a check.
Unlike the Wildcat guy.
I was going to say, when we dealt
Really
with,
sticky.
when we dealt with artists for the Wildcat, he was very particular about that. And what we could do to it. He said, once you buy that thing, you can do whatever you want to with it. That's
and these are being built in West Texas.
Near Abilene.
Yeah. That's how we are out now. So I think that one thing that council would at least like to discuss is color options.
Okay.
I know that originally my understanding is that the red one would go on the west side of the interstate,
Correct.
sort of representing Belton-ish, maybe. That's what I get, and I'm happy about it. And then on the other side would be the blue one.
That is correct. That was the original concept.
That is a lot of blue and red, 20 feet of it.
And again, that ship is not sailed. The artist, and we've let him know that there may be some potential changes based on council decision. He's fully aware of that. He's fully aware that he has to submit color samples for approval. So we still have opportunities to do what you'd like to do.
And I think you and I had a conversation about this some yesterday. You said, I think maybe the artist said that red, blue, yellow.
Yeah. Those were the three when we met with them. He said are very typical and the most popular colors and ones that seem to work well for this type of art. But that doesn't mean that's what you have to go with.
So I was out in the industrial park this morning and saw, and of course everybody knows Drayton's artwork out front. I'm assuming that's probably a different material than what these are being, because to me those are very nice. They're classy. They're not overly obtuse. I think they represent what he's doing out there well. So that doesn't appear to be paint. I'm assuming that's probably different material than steel.
It very well may be. I've been out there several times. I've looked at them. I haven't gone.
Yeah.
I don't know if Drayton, something would happen if I was up there testing them.
Okay.
So I've not done that.
So you're wondering if they can paint it silver?
Possibly, or what are the other color options? I think council, again, like Councilmember Walker said, we're the ones that get calls on this stuff.
Right.
You know, we're the first ones that are in the line of, hey, that's a waste of taxpayer money. And that's why I'm not voting against whatever bond, you know, or, you know, what, if people want to get stoked up, this is an easy target. So I think that council would probably at least appreciate an opportunity to have some input. That way we have ownership of the things that we're ultimately blamed for.
I understand completely.
If we can, council, is that appropriate? Is everybody in agreement with that?
I'm excited.
We at
about
least
the
want to have some
opportunity to have
options. Right.
Yeah, you have
Culture.
full options, really.
Yeah.
Because they are, you know, he does submit photos to us with his invoices, so we know he's doing stuff. And they're completely, you have full color palette right now to paint.
What material is it built out?
It's steel, it's built out of steel.
So if it's
Yeah, I'm sitting here
not
looking at
heated,
the reflection on the lights up here.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing that hits me, you cannot have it where it has to be painted, I assume, because it can't be reflected.
That was a point I was gonna, that's a very, very, very good
good.
point. We want to be extremely careful about sun and reflecting in blind spots. And that's, you know, with the paint, it would absorb that, not reflect.
Does he not have the capacity to put these on a website with different colors so we can look at it with 4 or 5 different colors on them?
If he doesn't, we do.
That
So-
would be a whole lot better to say that one pink and that one green.
Right.
We a road trip.
Huh?
Have a road trip.
Are they going to be the
St.
same?
Mom's
Or are they
Tablet.
different? Is each one different? Or
And these are the two. And
Oh,
they're in
that's the
production.
design. Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, so the one that is currently on the floor, so that's how he does it. He makes a small mock-up and then he goes big. The red one is not necessarily, may not be red, but it'll be on the west side, the other one on the east side.
Mhm.
But that is the art. Just
David, the
20 foot
sil-
tall.
oh,
I'm sorry.
silver is not an option.
Not necessarily. What we want to make sure that we do, it would be something that would absorb
Right.
sunlight rather than reflect it. For example, stainless steel would be bad.
Yeah, more of a matted.
Yes.
But I drive by Drayton's every day and I don't ever get any type of reflection from them.
Right, yeah, I think it could be almost any color of paint because it would absorb that light rather than grabbing and reflecting. I think that's, you know, which we're beyond, this was expensive enough. If it was stainless steel, we didn't ask for that price.
Mm.
So, there were 2 reasons for that. One, we knew it would be expensive, but also we were very concerned about driver safety and reflecting sunlight and having blind spots.
I really like Brayton's more neutral rather than the definite colors. Is that the correct way to say that, Drayton? What's it, that Drayton's the more neutral color?
I think that's an accurate assessment.
I kind of like that, just me, like that better than the 2 colors.
Well, how much time do you think we would have the opportunity to mull it over and come up with some color?
So I would say the best way to do this, and I'll just tell you, I'm going back to Cody. I'm going to the creative guys, but let them put this, we'll talk to the artist first. My guess is he's probably not going to have the ability to put this into a program that can produce color options, but I believe that we can do that pretty easily. Put that in there and create options for you that we can send out through the city, and then we can go from there and start making adjustments so you can make a decision. That's what I would recommend is let's do color mock-ups based on the actual art and then go from there.
What sort of maintenance is required on something like this?
It should be very, very minimal. The only thing that you would really, besides a car, would be paint if we had to repaint something.
Yeah. So again, my experience with this growing up was out in Abilene, and long story, but Abilene installed some art along the railroad tracks years ago, and they whenever it was installed with raw, as raw steel with the intention of letting it rust over time and sort of getting that dark color, and it looks nice. So, but you've either got to go all in, right, and paint it well and keep up with it, or no paint and just let it go. The last thing we want to see is rust stains, coming down. So I just wondered how durable. I mean, obviously it's intended to be outside, so it would be durable. But I don't know how often you would have to redo it.
I would think it would be fairly a minimal time frame. I mean, you every 10 years at the most.
Yeah. And you don't patch it, you just go ahead and redo the whole thing.
That's what I would think, is you shroud it, sandblast it, and just redo it. That way it's clean paint everywhere.
Yep.
So, and 10 years, when we install it, you got another option.
That's right.
I'm gonna change the color.
We're doing blue.
There you go.
Okay. Very good. Council, any other questions for Mr. Patrick?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks for dragging me down here. They're really heavy.
They are pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And
I
in full
tilted one.
disclosure, I didn't do it. Somebody in my office did it. So I thanked him this morning when he came back, but he did look a little tired.
All right, very good. Let's move on to item number 5, which is to receive a departmental update. And it looks like performance excellence is up first.
Yes, sir. So what Gloria is handing out is not new information. If you'll remember, I think at your budget retreat, we went over the performance report, and if there had been a printer snafu, so that is the promised replacement document with the pretty cover and the right orientation. Make it a little easier to. Yeah, it's not new. It's just pretty and oriented better so you can read it. So for my updates, I have them organized by division. So I'm going to start with the progress for our performance and analytics division. As a reminder, that is headed by Christine Leal, who's our performance and analytics manager. And so I have this grouped by sort of our major projects at this right now in this area. So strategic plan, internal support, and key performance indicators. So for the strategic plan, the document you have in front of you, we completed the FY21 performance report. We have continued to meet with departments. We do that on a quarterly basis to monitor their strategic plan progress. We also have begun meeting with them through our most recent meetings to talk about any potential updates for the strategic plan for FY23 to be included with the business plan that you'll adopt or that will be presented in June. And then we also updated our Simple by Design web pages. If you'll remember from my presentation at the council budget retreat, I talked about developing a performance portal where we would have a lot of the city's performance data that now is sort of, you have to kind of hunt and peck, know what you're looking for to find. We'd have a performance portal where these things would be linked. We wouldn't actually move them. So a good example of this would be the finance department's reporting. So we wouldn't move it from the finance department, but we could have a link so that anybody searching for performance data would have one place to go and have links to all of these options, make it a little bit more user-friendly. We also recently conducted a hiring process for our business data analyst position, and I am excited to announce that we've hired a gentleman named Mike Treherne, and he's going to start on May 2nd. I'm super excited about him joining us. And then internal support. We are primarily an internal support department. One of the areas that we do a lot of support is related to Smartsheet. And so some of the things we worked on, we worked with our housing and community development on a public reporting dashboard for some of their work. And then we have been working to develop a more streamlined approval request process. So internally, we have a process we use where if there's programs or of course, I would blank on some of the other examples, but if we had some exceptions for our hiring policies or something like that, that had to go through a process to be approved and ultimately get to Bren for approval, there's an internal process that we do that through Smartsheet. So that's been something we've worked on for about the last year and a half. And so we have kind of continually tried to update that and make it more user-friendly. So we're doing that. We have a new tool in Smartsheet called Dynamic View, which is allowing us to make some even better adjustments to that. So we also, with Smartsheet, the way that came on board was probably a little bit unique. And typically when we have software programs, IT is responsible for making sure that If you need a license, you have a license. They kind of manage all of that user management. And so we had been doing that. Performance Excellence had been managing that, and we've actually transferred that to be more consistent with what we do for other software over to IT. And then for key performance indicators, we continue to work with departments to monitor and help them report on their KPI. And internally for Performance Excellence, we've done some work in expanding what our plans are for the data that we'll be reporting. And I have more information on that a little bit later in the presentation. And then organizational development. This is managed by Ashley Cooper, who is our organizational development manager. And this division's been really busy. So for performance management, we have been working to implement a new performance review process and tool that's called Imperform. So there was a lot of work there in actually getting the software implemented. We have done a pilot project with our police department and our marketing and communications department to have them test out what we had developed to make sure it's working properly and all of that before we roll that out citywide. Part of that is including our strategic plan goals into this new review platform so that we can cascade those goals throughout our organization and kind of still keep that reporting upwards. So training and development, Ashley and our safety coordinator, Mark, have been working hard with departments to identify and put together some resources for safety related training. And we are working to get learning content, so online training courses into the Dayforce learning management system, and we'll have that ready to roll out in October. And then employee engagement, we, for the first time, celebrated International Women's Day. That was really great. I don't know if you saw, they put the video out on our Facebook that we put together. So that was very well received. We work really closely with our marketing department on just things that we can do to put out for engagement. And one of the things that we're working on, one of the ideas is this idea of just popping by department visits where we can get out and be seen in the departments, get to know employees, kind of continue to build those relationships. We are working on our United Way campaign, which will kick off in May. We also have been planning, so it's a really great event and it's very well received every year. I think employees look forward to it, that Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day that's coming out actually next week. And then we have continued to collaborate on our employer branding project, marketing and human resources. Again, that's when, we've talked a lot about, hiring, some of the challenges we're having with hiring and that kind of thing. So that's a project we're working on together collaboratively to help with that. And then customer service, I don't know if as you came in the building, if you have been down to the front, now that we're reopened, we have a new admin one there. Her name is Virginia Suarez. You may know her. She is on the school board, has been there for a long time, but she recently joined us and is in there manning that entry booth. So
Is she down there now?
yes, ma'am.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I've seen her.
Yeah. We were excited for her to join us. She's going to be great. Also with organizational development is our safety program. Our safety coordinator, Mark Wolfert, he started with us in November. And so since I last came, to give you an update, he's really been out in the departments. Again, just kind of meeting staff, making sure that he's visible and as a resource to departments. He did a safety training needs assessment, and he's provided some sort of creative ways to provide training through UT Arlington, Texas Municipal League, and then developed a plan for a proposal for some driver training that we would hopefully conduct here in-house. And then that training program through UTA, through UT Arlington and TML, those are all free to us. It's just, he was able to find the resources. And so we've got some training coming up beginning in June. I think the first one is on tree trimming safety. So we've had some good response to departments. We'll have people out in this training. Again, they're free. We started, we reconstituted our safety committee. I don't know if you guys will remember, but we had a safety, the title was safety champion at the time. And He unfortunately passed away, so we had a good period of time where that position was vacant. And so we put the safety committee on hold until we were able to refill that position. So they've begun meeting again. And they are in the final stages of their review of the safety policy and procedures handbook. So that will be going, moving forward very soon. And then we have a Administrative Directive 5, which covers our vehicle accident review board and our workers' comp review board process. That's something that I think has been kind of mentioned for a long time, that we need to make some updates and improvements to that. So we're working through collaboration with HR and our city attorney's office, and then the safety committee to bring forward some proposed changes to that. So I think that'll be coming up pretty shortly too. We also took over the administration of both the VARB and the Workers' Comp Review Board from the city attorney's office. So that procedurally is a little different. And then Mark developed a monthly safety talk newsletter. And so every month he sends out just some safety tips. This last time, because, you know, as things are warming up, those stinging insects are out. And so he had some information that he sent out about that. And that's been very well received. We had some collaboration with marketing on that to get us a snazzy template. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion for our DEI program, as council is very well aware, you know, we're kind of working through that process. We still have, I think, some more work to do. We, you know, brought in the consultant in the training, had our workshop. But for the commission, so the commission has continued to meet throughout this time. What we've done with the commission, so we didn't want it to be a waste of time for them. So what we've been doing with our meetings is utilizing this time just to educate them on city services and what's going on with the city. So we have had presentations on our Love Where You Live program, our housing and community development programs. Human Resources came and talked about their recruiting and hiring, and then also had Natalie present about the library programs. So all things I think that ultimately will be good information as they begin their, you know, the work that you all will charge them to do. It would be good information for them to have. Now looking forward to what we have upcoming, our performance and analytics division, like I mentioned earlier, will be working to develop those recommendations for any updates to the strategic plan. We're going to onboard our business data analyst, and then complete those revisions to the approval request process I mentioned earlier. And then organizational development, we're going to conduct that staff training on that performance review software, Imperform. That will be ready to roll out in June. We'll have our United Way campaign, as I said, that starts in May. We have the Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day on the 28th. And then we're going to complete getting all of those training courses into the Dayforce learning management system so that we can roll that out in October. We also plan to have a employee engagement survey. So we're going to be working with our two divisions, the performance and analytics division and the organizational development division are going to be working together to develop that survey. And then we hope to hold a city hall picnic. There's been a lot of change in, you know, staff, and, you know, there are a lot of new faces that I don't know. And so I think it'd be a really great opportunity to, you know, we have the brand new, you know, first floor downstairs to just kind of get people together in a little bit of a more informal, get to know you kind of environment. So that's a hope for us as well. And then those safety policies and procedures that I talked about, those will be submitting for final approval. We'll have that training I talked about in June, finalize those recommendations for that VARB and Workers' Comp Review Board recommendations to that administrative directive. We also plan to launch some quarterly safety statistics. So we'll be talking a little bit more about what our experience is. So, you know, sharing with departments a little bit more about what kind of accidents and incidents that they're actually experiencing. And then we'll continue to conduct our safety site visits. And then for DEI, again, we'll be following up with, you know, the council on the program development we'll continue those commission meetings. We have a plan for I would say out for the next 6 months or so about what sort of content we'll be presenting to them. And hopefully, I'm hopeful we'll have our DEI manager hiring process sometime fairly soon. And then I mentioned earlier about internally our department that we've been working to develop some ideas around key performance indicators for us. And if you'll remember, I think one of the things I mentioned that moving forward, that is something that we're going to be working on is a comprehensive survey program. And excuse me, a lot of that survey data will help us to see how we're doing. And so one of the things related to an important area is employee engagement. And so this is an example, this isn't us, but it's an example of the kinds of things that we, through the use of surveys, want to be able to report on. So something like the % of employees who feel their ideas and suggestions are valued by department management, % of city employees who believe the city uses, well, that's a particular survey that they do, but essentially that one is saying % of employees that would see that that information or their opinions that they share through surveys, that they see results from that, right? But these are some examples of things that we want to track for ourselves. Another thing we want to start tracking is this employer net promoter score. And so the net promoter score is something that, like, say, for instance, Coca-Cola, they would be a good example of that. Coca-Cola would want to know through maybe the use of surveys is how many customers would recommend their product. So it's used out for companies to find out, how many people are supporters or would recommend their product to others. So we can use that same thought process and same methodology to figure out how many of our own employees would be recommending us as a great place to work to their friends and families and acquaintances. And so that's what we're looking to do. And essentially the way this works is, again, through the use of a survey, we would ask a question like, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our organization to your family or friends? And so you'll see that scale there. So once that's all tabulated, those people who fall out would rate 0 to 6 would be what we would consider to be detractors. So those are really people who are very dissatisfied. We definitely want to know, what % of our employees would fall out there. And then you'd have those people that fall out in 7 to 8. And those are people that are not necessarily emotionally invested, but they're also not necessarily disengaged. They're just kind of there. And then we have those people that would fall out at 9 and 10 that would be our promoters. Those are really our cheerleaders. And those, are the employees that are out there spreading the good word about what a great place the city is to work. So employee development engagement, these are some of the things we'd like to track: % of employees that currently feel engaged at work, % of employees that would like to develop within the organization, % of employees that plan to stay with the city for some, we could decide what that term would be, 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And then safety. The first two are things we're already tracking. Our DART rate, which is days away, restricted and transferred rate, and then our TRIR rate. But we also want to begin tracking things like total number of days lost to injury per FTE, total number of safety training hours by department, number of accidents per mile driven, % of accidents or incidents that are reported and investigated in a timely manner. And then finally, for performance and analytics, one of the things that we have on our plans, on our horizon, is this idea of, continuous improvement. So when we get started with that, looking toward, looking at annual versus estimated dollars saved through the implementation of these continuous improvement projects or practices. Also looking at, through this external survey question, How satisfied are you with the amount of information provided on the city's performance of our website and information that we put out, asking our citizens how satisfied they are with how much information we put out. And then internally, asking employees, what % of employees believe they have the performance information they need to carry out their role? And what % of employees would be aware of the performance information that is collected in their work area? So that's some of the things that we internally want to begin tracking for ourselves. And that's all I have to share. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, anything?
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the survey, program that I talked about for a lot of different reasons. I think it's going to be really helpful information for other departments like marketing and communications and for us. So I'm excited about that.
There's a lot of data amongst 1,000+ employees, right?
Absolutely.
People coming and going.
Absolutely.
And mistakes can be made, and at that level, they're expensive. So I know that we've put a lot of time, effort, and frankly, money into the ability to begin to track that information, but I think it's first off.
Oh, yes.
So I look forward to seeing, what all comes out of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a clever idea.
Yeah.
And as a council member, I certainly would like to feel more popping by. Because you think you're improving.
Right. Well, I think, especially with our safety coordinator and also with, organizational development manager, it is important, I think, just to it's funny, my daughter recently started her first job and she came home and told me how she works for a vet and how the vet gave them, they bring donuts every once in a while, or they'll give them snacks or, just treats of recognition and things like that. And she's 19 years old and is talking about how that made her feel. It's the same thing here. Our employees, if maybe it's a small thing, but it's nice to be able to recognize people in some small way. And so, yeah, I'm excited about that as well. It's the opportunity to continue to do things like that.
That's a great idea.
Good. Deputy Chief Test.
All right, well, I'm going to present the update for the police department on behalf of Chief Reynolds. Chief had to go out of town today. He's a member of the Patrol and Tactical Operations Committee for the International Association of Chief of Police, and he had to go out of town for their meeting. That's important to us because he's contributing to the industry and those conversations on what's important, but also he gets direct feedback that he brings back to us, and it helps us in our future development plans. So we want to start off with saying we focus a lot of our attention on building relationships, building trust, and communicating with y'all and with the community at large. And that's what we seek to continue to do as we move forward in our relationships across the city. Some numbers to look at, staffing still continues to be a major issue within the police department. Currently, we have 16 vacancies, but that doesn't truly tell the whole story. We have 7 officers that are in the police academy, 4 that are in the field training program. And then when you look at our people on FMLA or out on military duty, and you calculate all those numbers together, we're about 32 officers down of what we could put on the street. So we're working at about 132 strength instead of the 163 strength. And we see those impacts across the department. Now we really load our patrol division. We believe that the patrol is the backbone of the agency, and we can't do anything without getting the initial contacts and the initial reports into them. But the staffing is impacting us across the board in areas such as our follow-up on criminal investigations, and we have to be very strategic about that and prioritize things appropriately to be able to get convictions going forward and finalize cases. So we're watch this daily, and we're making strides to try to turn this ship around, but it's going to take some time. So just some end of year statistics comparing 2021 and 2022. Our goal is from hello at the dispatch center to hello and officers at your doorstep, 5 minutes. Now you can see that we're not we're not making it. And those are impacted. Some of these numbers we believe are a little high on this response time of 45 seconds increase from 2020 to 2021. We think that the Uri storm, with the delays in our response, things like that, that 1 month really skewed some of that quite a bit, our response time. So that's a factor that was there in 2021 that wasn't there in 2020. And also one of the things that we can't control is the dispatch time, the time that they received a call to the time that dispatched out to our officers. And they're also in the same position that we are as a police department. The Bell County Comms Center has been significantly understaffed for the last couple of years, and they're continually recruiting and hiring and losing staff. They can't seem to get to full strength over there. So that impacts how quickly they can get a call into queue and get a call dispatched out to us so that we can respond. But we monitor this, and we're constantly looking at different strategies to try to respond quicker to calls, and that goes to customer satisfaction for the citizens. So this is, we're really excited about this as you look at it. If you look at Part 1 crimes in 2020 compared to 2021, all the Part 1 crimes in 2021 were reduced. And so you see with murder, there was a 29% decrease, rape was down 10%, et cetera, across the board. We were a significant decrease in our auto thefts. We went for a period there in 2020 that it just was running wild for us. So we've seen significant decreases in that. And when you look at the next slide, you see that in violent crimes, when you break down Part 1 crimes between violent crimes and property crimes, we see an 18% decrease in violent crimes, and we see a 12% decrease in property crimes. Now, we're a little concerned about some violent crime in the first quarter of this calendar year. And so you probably have seen some news reports and information about drive-by shootings and things like that. And so that is a little bit of an uptick. We're hoping that as the year goes by, that we'll be able to bring some of those statistics down. And we're maneuvering some things internally within the agency to try to focus on, put an intense focus on some of these violent crime issues. And so we're constantly trying to shift our staffing and shift our strategies to address any upticks we see in certain areas. And then just some of the different citations. We see there's a 1% increase in the citations and citation charges, warnings, things like that. There's some variations there. Yeah, well, we had, if you look back at 2020, we pretty much totally shut down proactive enforcement, traffic enforcement due to COVID. And we really restricted our officers from going out and making contact out of concern for health and safety of our officers. And when you do that, sometimes it's hard to turn that switch back on. Trying to get our guys re-engaged and really active. But we're putting a lot of focus on getting them re-engaged and getting them to do in traffic enforcement, not because we want to write tickets, but we know that tickets are an educational tool. And when we look down at our accidents, we see some increases in our overall accident rates. And we feel like we can show statistically over time that there's this direct correlation between increases in accidents and how the enforcement of traffic laws. When our enforcement decreases, accident increases. It's just the enforcement is a check on behavior. And when they know we're out there monitoring it, they tend to try to behave better. So some of the previous 90 days activities that we've been involved in, of course, we appreciate y'all's support in launching the EPIC recruiting project. That we have a dedicated website for reaching out and trying to recruit new officers. We're still, collecting data, and we've had some data reviews that we're doing internally with marketing to see how effective that is, if there's any shifts that we need to do there to reach our audience better. But it's up and running, and we're hopeful that that will have a significant impact on our recruiting. The niche record management project, or the Centurion project, we've been engaged in this for about the last 18 months, or 18 to 20 months, but we've made significant progress in the last 90 days. We've completed the interagency agreement with about 12 of the all the participating agencies that started with us in the project has come and signed the interagency agreement, which is a big deal to try to get everybody on the same sheet of music and agreeing across the board was a big task, and we got across the finish line.
Deputy, is that mostly Bell County departments?
We have,
What's the breadth of that?
it's almost all the Bell County police agencies minus a couple, like Little River Academy, Holland, and I think Rogers.
Okay.
And Little River Academy has reached out to us here in the last couple of weeks, seeking the opportunity to get on board. At this point, that has to go to the executive board for the Centurion project to determine if they'll allow them to come on. So
My understanding of that is this is a way that basically if all law enforcement agencies are using the same system, that we're able to, obviously they're using the same database. So someone does something in Killeen and that person ends up being pulled over, whatever, in Temple, our guys know about it.
correct.
Is that basically the overview?
Yeah, it'd be quicker intelligence and information sharing between agencies. At this point, the way we do it is by phone call or sending emails or texts to people in other agencies trying to gather information. This will be at the push of a button, we can pull someone up and review it. It also adds some efficiencies in our Bell County communication system center.
Yeah.
And so that would make an impact when we talk about our dispatch and things like that. That makes an impact there because instead of them having to check, 8 to 10 or 12 different systems when they run a check across the county, they go into one system and check the whole county. And so that will significantly impact their efficiencies of operation there as well.
And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think council knows this, but just in case, it's my understanding that the impetus for this project was Chief Reynolds, right? I mean, this started here in Temple and he was able to get imagine trying to get this group of people on board, much less people all the way across the county, right? With, territorial ownership issues and all those. So, kudos to all of you for doing that. That's great work.
Temple is the host agency, so Kelly and her team are going to be taking on, we've added a position to, we've authorized a position. We haven't added it yet. She's working on that. But yeah, Temple team from several different departments took the leadership role in this. And another benefit is a fiscal benefit, especially for smaller agencies who wouldn't likely be able to on their own afford a system that would give them the capacity, but going in with a larger group, lets them have access to something they wouldn't otherwise have. So lots of, it's definitely the right thing to do.
Right.
I think Chief Teston was the project manager from the police department. He spent a lot of time on this.
I had hair when it started.
As you mentioned, there's a lot of personalities involved. So it was a big deal, but I think at the end, when we get it, it'll prove well worth the effort.
Yeah, good, very good. Congratulations. I don't want to just let that go without taking a minute.
And we did finalize the contract, so thank y'all for authorizing that as well. And so we actually, Kelly and I and Chief and her team had some initial conversations with Niche this week. So we're ramping up for an on-site visit with them here in the near future that we can really start diving into the development of the implementation plan and things of that nature. So the ball's rolling and picking up some steam. So
when do you see it going live?
It's going to take probably about 20 to get everybody up and in. It's probably 20 to 24 months. Wow. Temple's going to lead the way because we're going to be the first agency to launch or the first city to launch into the program. So we brought it forward, so we're gonna be the,
Host agency benefits.
yeah, our host agency headaches. We'll see. So, but, yeah. So, again, we're focusing on recruiting, hiring, and training of our staff. We have a test coming up in April 30th. And so the last day to sign up is April 25th. So anybody in the room want to join us, get signed up. And training is a real focus, of the department. We've had some issues with training just because of staffing. And so we're really trying to find ways of training, but also keeping our staff in cars, out there handling calls. So, we're working on different strategies to help in the training area as well.
How does that sign up for that testing or recruiting? How's that coming along, this test 29?
I don't have an update on the numbers yet. I can check on that and get back. Let you know.
We'll find out.
I would like to highlight something about that too, just because I think it can get lost a little bit in everything that you hear and everything the city's working on. But just based on state law, we aren't allowed to test as often as we're testing. So if we were just following your chapter 143 state law, you have to have a test, and you have to create a list from that test, and that list has to expire before you can create another list. Through our meet and confer process with, so I just feel like we are all working so well together as a team. So the officers that represent the association, they obviously see the need. The staff team that developed the strategy of let's amend that state law essentially for Temple, and let's test monthly or every other month. I'm not sure exactly how often you do it, but so we can have multiple lists happening at one time, which just allows us to move people through the process and start, it's just really been, I think, one of the more productive things that we've come up with, along with the lateral hiring program that was also allowed through meet and confer agreement. And we've had 6 or how many lateral hires have we had recently? I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Well, since the change, we've had 2 laterals. One was qualified. They're both laterals. One was here before, left, but by rule, he's more of a lateral than a rehire. But we do have a lot of prospects on laterals that I think will potentially pick up in this cycle, from what I'm hearing.
And the benefit of that, of course, or one benefit, is that you're bringing on officers that are ready pretty quickly. They're already trained, they're already experienced. They still need to go through our departmental training, but they don't have to start at the beginning of the academy. And so those vacancy rates that Chief Teston mentioned, they're significant. And so that helps as well. So I just wanted to highlight, we don't talk about meet and confer a lot until we ask you to approve an agreement every couple of years. But we have come such a long way since we started with meet and confer. How long ago was that? 2015, 2016? And we are, I think there was a lot of trepidation around it at the beginning. Maybe yes. Around 7, even at this table. But the way that we've been able to use that together as a team to create some of these things that are helping us solve problems together is just, it's just really wonderful. And I would say, even having been involved in it since 2015 or 16, when we did our first agreement, the trust level, the communication, what we've done in this last agreement, and that's credited to a lot of people, a lot of time between city manager's office and police administration and the police officers association. And then a lot of credit goes, to Chief Reynolds and the type of environment that he's created in the department. But I just want to highlight that the reason that we're having another testing 2 months after we had the last one, which resulted in the most successful pass rate that we've had in a long time. And the one right before that resulted in I think 9 officers that we were able to hire that were some of the highest quality we've seen in years, is in part because we're working very well throughout the organization with the officers to solve some of these problems that state law is really a barrier to.
Very good.
Chaplaincy program, we've been actively engaged in developing a chaplaincy program. This dates back to pretty much since Chief Reynolds onboarded, or shortly after he onboarded with the city. He and Bren had some conversations with some other stakeholders about the importance of developing this. We just this week had interviews with 3 potential candidates for the program and plan on getting them, all 3 or some of them on board here in the coming weeks. And this goes back to, just not just what they can do in the community to take some pressure off us. Police officers need to be working cases, things like that. And we can call the chaplains in to deal with the trauma with families, sometimes, death notifications, things like that go along with some of the things we deal with. It takes that pressure off our officers and gives it to someone that's probably better trained and more focused on doing it with a lot of empathy. And officers can be a little brash sometimes. So we're really working on that, but also internally. If you have a healthy police department, it impacts how they deliver services to the community. And part of that's not just physical health, it's emotional health. So we know what our officers, engage in outside of their work. If they have home life issues or whatever, they bring that to work with them. And so we want to put, mechanisms in place that we can help them. And so chaplaincy program is one of them. Another area that we're looking at and trying is a peer support program internally. And so I'm heading up the chaplaincy program. Deputy Chief Clark is basically doing a hard reset on our peer support program and trying to rebuild that so that when our guys go out on a tragic event or tragic situation, we have a mechanism in place to bring them back in house and give them a chance to decompress and get those hurts out in a non-judgmental environment. So we're looking a lot at officer health and wellness and using these programs to look at it. We continue to try to engage the community through different programs like Coffee with a Cop, Burgers with a Badge. I think we have a Burgers with a Badge coming up in June, I think. So one pretty quickly coming up. We routinely, do school tours and small group tours through the PD and let them jump on our cars and and look at our different gear. And we also have a snow cone, trailer. So we go and do snow cones. I think we're bringing it out to do the Temple mentoring program through TISD. We're going to bring that out to Wilson Rec or Ralph Wilson this week, I think it is, or next week, to do snow cones for the students there. Chief has been engaged in the Leadership Temple program, and that's close to being completed. And so we're making a commitment internally within the department that the Deputy Chief Clark is signing up to go to the next one. And then I'll probably go to the one after that, and then DC Ferry. And then after we're through it, we're going to look at potentially our lieutenants going through it as well. And it goes to building relationships, building trust, and increasing communication. And we feel when we're engaged, then it gives people an opportunity to come and talk in an informal way to us, and more avenues to communicate. Next 90 days, continue to work on relationship, trust, and communication across the city and in different environments. Chief will be completing the Leadership Temple program, and we'll have several community outreach programs lined up as we move into late spring and early summer, and looking forward to doing those. It's exciting to get back doing these things. COVID shut us down quite significantly, and we have a lot of fun, and I think our officers have a lot of fun going out and just having coffee and talking to people, and it helps our officers too. Sometimes when you deal with tragedy or bad situations all day, you get a little callous and you start to think in us versus them mentality. But when you're able to go out in these environments, it makes them reconnect and go, everything's not bad, So it's good for officers. So, been working on the budget and pushing that to city management and keeping our fingers crossed. And, but we're excited about our ability to work with the animal shelter project with Belinda and her team. There's really some neat things that we're looking at there, and there'll be a remodel of that based on what we're seeing will be really a phenomenal improvement and really phenomenal for the community. It'll be a beautiful thing to see in the community. It'll be a really neat facility. And so we're excited about being involved in that. And then we're taking first steps in development of the public trading safety center out on West Adams in the Station 8 complex area. And so we've been working with the first stage of the driving pad and development of that, and one trailer storage for FD and one training building out there, a Simunition shoot house. This is the first phase that we're working on. The good thing, this is not just for public safety. We'll go for public works as well with trash trucks, and there'll be a huge driving area that all different departments across the city will benefit from it. And so we're excited about those projects and being able to start moving forward on those. This is closing slide and just different things that we've been able to be involved in. But we like seeing comments like this that Bobby Ott sent in. And we just want to throw it up there and let y'all see what Bobby Ott says about your police force. And we really appreciate his positive comments and support, and others that send in positive comments to us daily. Our chief shares this typically weekly with the staff. When he gets positive feedback weekly or every other week, he'll end the week with a letter out to the officers, just to say, hey, we got some attaboys, and say this officer did this officer did this. So helps build up morale, and it's been a good thing. So that's, I think, the end of it for me. I don't know why he put that in there. I'll try to answer any questions you have. If I can't, I'll phone a friend and get a hold of you. But if you have any questions.
Council, anything?
Did you catch the lady that stole all the meat?
We've made one arrest in that. We have two more warrants that we're looking to serve hopefully today and get those taken care of.
Good.
What was the value? We decided it had to be more than $2,000 on that lead in that truck.
I don't know what the final value was, so I don't know.
I thought there was like a big Easter cookout. But evidently this is like a thing.
See, there's a video, some guy asking where the bar.
Yeah, you got all the meat, right? Here's the meat.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think probably everybody on council will acknowledge that we've seen a real difference in the community with the work that you guys are doing with just reaching out and, building those relationships. And so I know that also takes extra effort away from just normal policing, right? So thank you all for that very much.
Thank you.
We're sorry we didn't have donuts here for you.
Next
I
time.
don't eat them in public.
Stereotype, right? Is it true that chief will not allow an officer, or he bans officers from going through Shipley's in a squad car? Or?
No.
Maybe you should think about that. All right, very good. Thank you all for participating. This has been a great work session today. But now I'm going to ask you to leave. This time, council will enter into an executive session to discuss the employment duties and work plan of the city attorney. Texas Government Code 551.074, the city council executive session discussing employment duties of the city attorney. No final action will be taken. Current time is 4